The email arrived at 3:47 p.m. on a Friday. Subject line: immediate meeting required, HR. I'd been expecting something like this for about a month. The signs had been there. Meetings I was suddenly excluded from, projects reassigned without explanation, my manager avoiding eye contact in the hallway. The corporate equivalent of relationship breadcrumbs before a breakup. But the timing was pointed. Friday afternoon. Late enough that I couldn't easily respond or organize a defense. Early enough that they could escort me out before most people left for the weekend. I walked to the HR conference room at 4 p.m. as requested. Carolyn Foster, HR director, was waiting with my manager, David Park, and someone I didn't recognize, probably legal. Or security based on his uncomfortable expression. Samantha, please sit. Carolyn started with that careful HR tone that means bad news is coming. We've decided to end your employment with Meridian Solutions effective immediately. On what grounds? This is an at-will termination. We're not required to provide specific cause. But you're choosing to terminate me without notice, without transition time, and on a Friday afternoon. That suggests cause. David spoke up. Samantha, this is a business decision. Your role is being eliminated as part of organizational restructuring. My role is being eliminated, or I'm being replaced. The role is being eliminated. So the Director of Client Operations position no longer exists? The specific configuration of your role is being eliminated. Functions will be redistributed. Corporate speak for we're firing you, but we don't want to say it directly. Carolyn slid a folder across the table. This is your separation agreement. 2-week severance pay, continuation of health benefits for 30 days, and a neutral reference letter. In exchange, you agree not to disparage the company and release any claims against Meridian. 2 weeks severance after 4 years of employment? That's insulting. It's our standard package for immediate terminations. Standard package for people you fire without cause. What if I don't sign? Then you receive nothing beyond accrued vacation pay as required by law. I opened the folder and skimmed the agreement. Standard corporate SIA language. But something caught my attention. The non-disparagement clause was mutual. They couldn't disparage me either. I'll need time to review this with an attorney. You have until 5 p.m. today to sign or the offer is withdrawn. I checked my watch. 4:12 p.m. They were giving me 48 minutes to make a decision about a legal document affecting my employment and financial future. That's not reasonable time for legal review. Those are the terms. We need your decision by 5 p.m. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to understand something about this moment. This wasn't about whether I was getting fired. That decision had been made before I walked into the room. This was about whether I'd panic under pressure and sign whatever they put in front of me, or whether I'd recognize that their artificial deadline was designed to prevent me from thinking clearly. If you've ever been told to clear your desk immediately, if you've ever been pressured to sign separation agreements under unreasonable time constraints, if you've ever felt like your employer was trying to push you out before you could organize a response, stay with me. Because what I did in that moment, choosing to clear my calendar instead of my desk, changed everything about how this termination played out. My name is Samantha Wells, and I've been Director of Client Operations at Meridian Solutions for 4 years. Meridian was a mid-sized software company, about 200 employees, providing customer relationship management tools to healthcare and finance clients. I joined as a senior client success manager and been promoted to director after 2 years. I managed a team of 8 people, oversaw relationships with our largest clients, and was responsible for client retention and satisfaction metrics. My performance has been consistently strong. Last year's review rated me exceeds expectations in all categories. My team's retention rate was 94%, highest in the company. Our client satisfaction scores averaged 8.7 out of 10. So why was I being fired? The real reason, which nobody would say directly, was that I'd pushed back on a new pricing strategy that our VP of Sales, Greg Mitchell, had proposed 3 months ago. Greg wanted to implement surprise price increases mid-contract for existing clients buried in terms of service updates that most wouldn't read carefully. I'd raised concerns in leadership meetings, told Greg and our CEO that surprise mid-contract increases would destroy client trust, potentially violate contract terms, and create legal exposure. I documented those concerns in emails and memos. Greg had gone to the CEO, Marcus Chen, and framed my objections as resistance to innovation and protecting clients over company interests. Marcus had sided with Greg. The pricing changes went forward. 2 weeks ago, 3 major clients had called me directly, angry about surprise charges that appeared on their invoices. One threatened legal action. Another was reviewing the contract with lawyers to determine if we'd breached terms. I'd escalated these complaints to Greg and Marcus, reminded them that I'd predicted exactly this problem, recommended we reverse the increases and communicate transparently with affected clients. Instead of reversing course, they decided I was the problem. Not the policy I'd warned against, the person who'd warned against it. Now, I was sitting in an HR conference room being told I had 48 minutes to sign away my rights to contest this termination. I'm not signing anything today, I told Carolyn. I'll review the agreement with an attorney and respond next week. Then the severance offer is withdrawn. You'll receive only accrued vacation pay. That's your choice. But I'm not making legal decisions under artificial time pressure. David looked irritated. Samantha, you're making this harder than it needs to be. Just sign the agreement and move on. I'm making this exactly as hard as it needs to be. You're terminating me without cause on a Friday afternoon and giving me less than an hour to sign a legal document affecting my employment rights. That's designed to prevent me from thinking clearly. I'm not playing that game. Then we're done here. Carolyn stood up. Please return to your desk, collect your personal items, and return your laptop and badge to security by 5 p.m. Someone will escort you. I don't need an escort. I know where my desk is. The unknown man, definitely security, spoke for the first time. Company policy requires an escort during immediate terminations. Knows? I'm not a security risk. I'm a client operations director who's being fired for raising compliance concerns. Nevertheless, I'll accompany you. We walked back to my desk in silence. Several colleagues looked up as we passed, then quickly looked away. Word had clearly spread that something was happening. At my desk, I pulled out my phone and opened my work calendar. 37 scheduled meetings and calls over the next 2 weeks. Client check-ins, project reviews, team meetings, vendor negotiations. I started canceling them methodically. Each cancellation included a brief note. Due to unexpected organizational changes, I'm no longer with Meridian Solutions. Someone from the client operations team will reach out to reschedule. The security escort watched me. Ma'am, you need to collect personal items and leave. I'm clearing my calendar so clients aren't left waiting for meetings that will never happen. It'll take 10 minutes. That's not necessary. It's completely necessary. These are client meetings. If nobody reaches out to reschedule, clients will assume we're disorganized or don't care. That creates exactly the kind of relationship damage I was hired to prevent. I continued canceling appointments. 15 minutes later, I'd cleared my entire calendar, sent handoff emails to my team members about which clients each person should prioritize, and documented pending issues that needed immediate attention. Then I collected my personal items, a few photos, a coffee mug, a plant. Left my laptop, badge, and company phone on the desk. Walked out with my box of belongings at 4:47 p.m. No panic. No rushing. No signing documents under pressure. Just organized transition and dignified exit. That weekend, I did 3 things. First, I called an employment attorney my sister recommended. Her name was Patricia Moreno, and she specialized in wrongful termination cases. Ms. Wells, walk me through what happened. I explained the timeline, raising concerns about surprise price increases, being told I was resistant to innovation, clients complaining exactly as I'd predicted, and being terminated immediately on AS. Friday afternoon with less than an hour to review a separation agreement. Did you document your concerns about the pricing strategy? Yes. Emails to Greg and Marcus. Memos outlining legal and client relations, risks. Meeting notes from leadership discussions. Excellent. That's crucial. Do you still have access to those documents? They're in my work email and files, which I no longer have access to. Did you save copies anywhere? I forwarded some key emails to my personal account when I first raised the concerns. I wanted a record of what I'd flagged in case there were questions later. That was smart. Employment cases often hinge on whether you can prove you raised concerns and were retaliated against. Your contemporaneous documentation creates that record. So what are my options? First, don't sign their separation agreement. 2-week severance after 4 years is inadequate, especially if this is retaliatory termination for raising compliance concerns. Second, I'll send a letter to Meridian outlining potential wrongful termination claims and requesting better severance terms. Third, if they don't respond appropriately, we consider filing a lawsuit. What kind of timeline are we looking at? Letter goes out Monday. They'll probably respond within a week. Either they'll offer better terms to avoid litigation, or we'll need to decide if filing suit is worth the time and cost. How much does this cost me? I work on contingency for wrongful termination cases. I get a percentage of any settlement or award, but you don't pay upfront fees. If we don't recover anything, you don't owe me anything. Second thing I did, I compiled all the documentation I'd saved. Emails where I'd raised concerns about the pricing strategy. Memos outlining risks. Responses from Greg and Marcus dismissing my concerns. Client complaints that proved my predictions correct. 23 documents total, spanning 3 months. Clear timeline showing I'd identified a problem, raised it through proper channels, been overruled, and then terminated when the predicted problems materialized. Third thing, I updated my LinkedIn profile and started reaching out to my professional network. I'd been in client operations for 12 years. I knew people at competing companies, former colleagues who'd moved to other organizations, clients who'd worked with me at previous jobs. Within 48 hours, I had 3 informational interview requests and 2 actual job leads. Monday morning, Patricia sent her letter to Meridian's legal department. It was professionally worded but direct. I had documentation showing I'd raised concerns about potentially illegal pricing practices, been terminated shortly after those concerns proved accurate, and was given inadequate severance with an UA reasonable signing deadline designed to prevent legal review. The letter requested 4 months severance, 1 month per year of service, 6 months of health benefits continuation, a positive reference letter, and a mutual non-disparagement agreement that actually provided value to both parties. If Meridian didn't respond appropriately within 10 business days, we'd consider filing a wrongful termination lawsuit. The response came on Wednesday. Not from Har, from Marcus Chen directly via his personal email to my personal email. Samantha, I received notice that you've retained legal counsel. I want to discuss this directly before lawyers get more involved. Can we talk? I forwarded the email to Patricia. She called me within an hour. Don't respond directly. Let me handle communication. If Marcus wants to talk, it goes through me. That's what you hired me for. Patricia responded to Marcus. Any discussions about Ms. Wells' termination and severance should be directed to her as legal counsel. She was available to meet with Meridian's legal team to discuss resolution. Thursday, Patricia and I had a conference call with James Bradford, Meridian's outside counsel, and Carolyn Foster from HR Darchi. James opened. Ms. Moreno, we'd like to understand your client's concerns about her termination. Meridian maintains this was a routine organizational restructuring with no retaliation involved. Patricia responded, then explain why Ms. Wells was terminated less than 2 weeks after escalating client complaints that validated concerns she'd raised 3 months earlier about your pricing strategy. The timeline suggests retaliation for raising compliance issues, not routine restructuring. We don't agree with that characterization. Do you dispute that Ms. Wells raised concerns about surprise mid-contract price increases? Do you dispute that those concerns were dismissed? Do you dispute that clients complained exactly as she predicted? Do you dispute that she was terminated shortly after escalating those complaints? James was quiet for a moment. We dispute that the termination was retaliatory. Then you'll have no problem providing the documentation showing her performance was inadequate, or that her role was legitimately being eliminated for business reasons unrelated to the pricing concerns. We're not required to provide cause for an at-will termination, true. But if you're claiming this wasn't retaliation, you'll need to demonstrate that her termination was based on legitimate business reasons. Otherwise, the timeline speaks for itself. She raised concerns, proved right, and was fired. That's textbook retaliation. After an hour of back and forth, James said they needed to consult with leadership and would respond by the following week. The following Tuesday, Meridian's formal offer arrived. 3 months severance, 4 months of health benefits, neutral reference letter, mutual non-disparagement agreement, and this was the important part, acknowledgement that the termination on was not performance-related, and that Ms. Wells' eds. Concerns about pricing practices had been noted by management. That last part is gold, Patricia told me. They're essentially admitting your concerns were legitimate. That language protects you if future employers ask why you left Meridian. You can truthfully say you raised compliance concerns that management acknowledged were valid, and you were laid off in a restructuring. Is this a good settlement? It's fair. 3 months gives you runway to find new employment. The acknowledgement protects your professional reputation, and the mutual non-disparagement prevents them from badmouthing you if prospective employers call for references. Should I accept? That's your decision. We could push for more, 4 months, 6 months, but that risks them withdrawing the offer and forcing litigation. Litigation is expensive and time-consuming. My recommendation is to accept this offer and move forward. I accepted. 3 weeks after being told to clear my desk immediately, I had negotiated a separation package 3 times better than their original offer, with language protecting my reputation. 2 months after leaving Meridian, I started as Director of Client Success at Vertex Solutions, a competitor in the CRM software space. Same role, slightly better compensation, and, most importantly, a CEO who'd explicitly said during interviews that they valued employees who raised concerns about compliance and client relations issues. We need people who will tell us when we're about to make mistakes, he'd said. Not yes, people who go along with bad decisions to avoid conflict. 4 months after I left Meridian, I got a LinkedIn message from my former team member, Rebecca Dat. Samantha thought you'd want to know. The pricing strategy you warned about has turned into a disaster. We've lost 6 major clients in the past 3 months. 3 are threatening lawsuits for contract violations. Greg is blaming the client ops team for failing to manage client expectations, even though we told him this would happen. 2 people quit last month. Morale is terrible. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm not surprised. Everyone knows you were right. We're all saying Samantha tried to warn us when these client calls blow up. Greg won't admit he was wrong, but everyone else knows. What's Marcus saying? Not much. He's been weirdly quiet about the whole situation. But rumor is the board is asking questions about why client retention dropped so dramatically in 1 quarter. 6 months after my termination, I was speaking at a client success leadership conference. My session was titled When Doing Your Job Correctly Gets You Fired: Ethics in Client Operations. 6 months ago, I told the audience I was told to clear my desk immediately and escorted out of my workplace. I'd been terminated without notice on a Friday afternoon and given less than an hour to sign a separation agreement that would waive my rights to contest the termination. Why was I fired? Because I'd raised concerns about a pricing strategy that I believed would damage client relationships and create legal exposure. My VP of Sales wanted to implement surprise mid-contract price increases. I documented that this would violate client trust and potentially breach contract terms. Management proceeded anyway. Clients complained exactly as I'd predicted. And rather than acknowledge the strategy was flawed, management decided I was the problem. Here's what I learned. When you're told to clear your desk immediately, you have choices. You can panic. You can sign whatever they put in front of you out of fear. You can rush out feeling humiliated. Or you can clear your calendar instead. Take care of your responsibilities professionally. Document what's happening. Refuse to make legal decisions under artificial time pressure. And walk out with dignity. New or white? I chose the second option. Instead of rushing to pack my desk, I spent 15 minutes canceling client meetings and sending transition emails. Instead of signing a separation agreement without review, I told them I'd consult an attorney. Instead of panicking, I moved calmly and deliberately. That calm response, refusing to be rushed, insisting on proper review, documenting everything, led to a settlement 3 times better than their initial offer. It preserved my professional reputation. And it gave me time to find a better opportunity. If you're ever in a situation where you're being pressured to accept terms quickly, to sign without review, to clear out before you can think, remember, their urgency is designed to prevent your clarity. Don't let them dictate. Your timeline. You have more power than you think. After the presentation, a woman in her 30s approached me. Ms. Wells, I'm facing a similar situation. I raised concerns about data privacy practices at my company. Now my manager is documenting every small mistake I make, and I feel like termination is coming. What should I do? Document everything. Every concern you raised about data privacy, when you raised it, who you raised it to, and what responses you received. Every instance of your manager suddenly scrutinizing your work more closely. Create a timeline showing the relationship between raising concerns and increased scrutiny. Is that enough? It's evidence. If you're terminated, that evidence shows potential retaliation for raising compliance concerns. Without documentation, it's your word against theirs. With documentation, you have a record that proves your version of events. Should I send documents to my personal email? Check your company's IT policies. Some companies prohibit forwarding work emails to personal accounts. But you can usually print documents, take notes of key information, or summarize concerns in personal records created outside work systems. The goal is to have evidence that isn't dependent on company systems you'll lose access to when terminated. What if they fire me before I can organize everything? Then you work with what you have. But start now. Don't wait until you're sitting in an HR conference room being told you have 30 minutes to sign a separation agreement. 1 year after leaving Meridian, I received a call from Marcus Chen. He'd gotten my personal number from LinkedIn. Samantha, I wanted to reach out. I know it's been a year, but I felt I needed to say something. I'm listening. You were right about the pricing strategy. We lost significant client business. We're dealing with 2 lawsuits from clients claiming we violated contract terms. The board demanded a full review of how that decision was made and who raised concerns. And what did that review find? That you raised objections clearly and repeatedly. That you documented risks accurately. That management overruled your concerns for short-term revenue reasons. And that we suffered exactly the consequences you predicted. Why? You calling me Marcus? Because I wanted to apologize. We made a bad business decision. When you raised concerns about it, we should have listened. Instead, we blamed you for the problems we created. That was wrong. Yes, it was. I also wanted you to know, Greg is no longer with the company. The board lost confidence in his judgment after the pricing disaster. And we've implemented new policies requiring compliance review of any pricing or contract changes before implementation. That's good. But it's coming after the damage, rather than preventing it. I know. I'm telling you this because your warnings could have prevented all of it if we'd listened. I'm sorry we didn't. I appreciate the apology, Marcus. But I've moved on. I'm in a role where leadership actually values people who raise concerns. I'm not interested in revisiting what happened at Meridian. I understand. But if you're ever interested in consulting work, I'd love to bring you in to talk to our leadership team about building better cultures around raising concerns. I'll think about it. 18 months after my termination, Meridian Solutions NS was acquired by a larger competitor. The acquisition price was reportedly 30% below what analysts had projected, partly due to client retention problems and ongoing legal issues from the pricing strategy fiasco. I saw the news on LinkedIn. Several former colleagues reached out to share the irony. The pricing strategy that was supposed to increase revenue had cost so much in lost clients and legal exposure that it depressed the company's valuation and sale price. 2 years after clearing my calendar instead of rushing to clear my desk, I was promoted to Vice President of Client Operations at Vertex Solutions. I now oversaw client success, customer support, and implementation teams across 3 product lines. In my first message to the broader team, I made a point of saying something I wished I'd heard earlier in my career. My door is always open for concerns about client relations, ethics, compliance, or anything that might create long-term PR problems, even if it's inconvenient short-term. I'd rather hear bad news early than deal with disasters later. And I will never retaliate against people for raising concerns professionally. That's a promise. 3 years after leaving Meridian, I was invited to speak at a business ethics conference. The session was about organizational cultures that punish people for doing the right thing. 3 years ago, I told the audience, I was terminated for raising concerns that later proved accurate. At the time, it felt devastating. I questioned whether I'd been wrong to push back, whether I should have just kept quiet and gone along. But looking back, being fired was the best thing that could have happened. Not because losing my job was good, it was stressful and scary, but because it freed me from a toxic culture that valued short-term thinking over long-term sustainability, that punished people for raising concerns instead of addressing the concerns themselves. The company that fired me went on to implement the strategy I'd warned against, lost major clients, faced lawsuits, damaged their reputation, eventually sold for significantly less than they could have because of the problems they'd created. Meanwhile, I found a company that actually values people who speak up, where raising concerns is seen as part of doing your job well, not insubordination, where leadership says, "Thank you for catching that," instead of "You're being difficult." If you're in an organization that punishes you for doing the right thing, remember, that's not your failure. That's the organization's failure. And you deserve better. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, I want you to understand something. This isn't about revenge or schadenfreude over Meridian's problems. It's about understanding that when you're being pushed out, how you respond in that moment matters more than the fact that you're being pushed out. When I was told to clear my desk immediately, I could have panicked, rushed to pack, signed their separation agreement out of fear, left feeling defeated. Instead, I cleared my calendar, took care of responsibilities, refused to sign without legal review, walked out with dignity. That choice, to move deliberately instead of frantically, gave me time to think clearly, negotiate a better settlement, and find a better opportunity. If you're ever told to clear your desk immediately, remember, their urgency is designed to prevent your clarity. Don't let them rush you into decisions you'll regret. Clear your calendar. Handle your transition professionally. Refuse to sign documents without review. And walk away knowing you took care of your responsibilities even when they didn't take care of you. If this resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe. Share your experiences in the comments about being terminated unfairly or refusing to be rushed into bad decisions. Those stories help others find courage in similar situations. Remember, they told me to clear my desk immediately, expecting panic and quick compliance. I cleared my calendar instead, handled my transition professionally, and walked away with dignity. They called later, trying to rush me into signing. I didn't answer. I talked to my attorney instead. And that choice changed everything.